Let me give you another example, and that is some things that are going on at my law school, Mercer University. We too offer a first-year course in the legal profession. This course is very explicitly focused on the goal of developing students' professional identities. It is a required course. Every first-year student takes it. It's offered in the spring semester. And it is in addition to our upper-level professional responsibility course, which we call Law of Lawyering. That decision was made to call it that to emphasize that it is not an ethics course. It is a course about the law of lawyering, and it is taught like a law course. I want you, while I'm talking about this course, to imagine that it's not actually me standing here. It's my colleague, Patrick Longan. Pat is the Boodle Chair in Legal Ethics and Professionalism at Mercer. He was hired at Mercer in 2001 to direct our Center for Legal Ethics and Professionalism and to develop a first-year course on professionalism. Pat would be here today, except that this is Parents' Weekend at Furman University, and his son is a freshman there. So I'm representing Pat. I have had the privilege of being involved in this course, however, because I speak in it and I help guide one of the small discussion groups. This course has evolved tremendously in the 10 years that we have been offering it. You've heard from some others about the struggles of doing this kind of work. We've really tried to adapt and learn, and I think we're getting there. I think things are just a lot better than they were in the beginning, and we know more what we're doing. So let me share a little bit about this course with you. First of all, the content is organized around what we consider to be the 5 virtues of the professional lawyer. This is Pat's distillation of the writings on professionalism and professional responsibility. We divide these into 5 virtues: competence, fidelity to the client, fidelity to the law, a duty of public service, and civility. One of the goals of this course is to give the students this framework and this vocabulary, and so we're very intentional throughout the course to bring students' conversations around the issues back to this particular framework. In addition, the assignments have been designed around this 4-component model. You heard Verna reference this model that comes out of moral psychology, the work of James Rest and Mickey Boubot. Pat and I were at a workshop about 4 years ago when we were introduced to this work, and it really opened our eyes as to ways of thinking about these issues. But that 4-component model says that if you want people to act ethically, they've got to have 4 interrelated capacities that they can access simultaneously: moral sensitivity, judgment, motivation, and implementation. As Neil explained to you, I think in the Q&A the other day, you've got to recognize it's an ethical issue. You've got to reason your way to the right solution. You've got to be motivated to do the right thing. That is, you've got to put self-interest, fear, other inhibitors aside. And finally, you've got to have the courage, the ego strength, the capacity to implement that decision. We present this framework to the students along with those 5 virtues, and we tell them this is a course where we want you to learn knowledge, values, and skills. And these are the particular skills that we're trying to help you learn so that you can act ethically when you graduate. Okay, here are the methods. We have a class of anywhere between 135 and 150, depending on how good the admissions year was. They meet for some of the sessions in large groups. I actually teach the very first session, which, because the class is always met at Mondays at 8:30, it happens to be the first gathering of the law school class after they've gotten their fall grades. And I wrap that into what I'm talking about. I present some of the research on professional identity, some of the research out of the Carnegie report. We tie that research to what we're trying to do in this course and say, this is why it matters. We include in there a couple of short reflective exercises that ask them to reflect on their purpose for coming to law school and what kinds of lawyers they want to be. Some of the information is delivered in online lectures. Pat has some lectures around practical wisdom, around the virtues, and those are delivered in ways that students can access on their own. The large group meetings sometimes include interviews of lawyers. All of the research says it's very important to bring exemplars into this work. And so lawyers come in, Pat interviews them in front of the class, and he's worked really hard to get a very diverse sampling of people's backgrounds, their experience, and their practice area. We have weekly class meetings in groups of 24 to 26. Our first year class, starting in the fall, is divided into 6 sections. They have 2 small section experiences in the fall, so they come into this course in the spring in the same small sections that they've been in the fall, and so once a week they meet in the small sections. We have oral history interviews that they do in a group. They're local lawyers, not really oral histories, but they are interviews. They talk to the lawyers about their lives. They have to read biographies, another way of bringing exemplars into the room, and there are a number of reflection exercises. Okay, one type of reflection exercise that we have are case studies. We use a book that has examples of lawyers who have failed to live up to their professional obligations for some of these case studies, and then we have case studies derived from other sources. The first couple of times students have case studies, they are really in role of critical observer. What went wrong for this lawyer? Why do you think it went wrong? What do you think could have happened differently? After that, they move into the role of decision makers. So they're assigned these case studies. They have to make a decision about what they would do. They meet in peer groups of 3 to discuss what they would do. Out of that peer group of 3, they have to come to some consensus at least about how they're going to report out their discussion, and then they meet in our small groups to report out, and those small groups are led by experts. I laughed when I put that word in there because it includes me. Pat leads most of the small groups, but I lead a small group, and a few other faculty members also lead small groups. Then following the small groups, they each do a blog posting. Again, they're divided by section for these blog postings, and the blog postings have to do with a prompt that we've given them. There also are reflections at the beginning and the end of the course, and they do written reflections on lawyer interviews. This reflection at the beginning and the end is the Keegan Professional Identity Assessment that they use at St. Thomas. We have several years of that. We have not yet coded them and done the results, but we do have that data there, and I think we're about to move into that. And then, after this foundation in the first year, it allows us to be pretty intentional upon building upon that foundation in the upper level courses. Students have a framework for discussing issues of professional identity. They have examples. They have developed some skills for reflection, which I think allow us to do some things in the upper level courses that are really valuable. In addition to teaching the legal ethics seminar, I also teach the classroom component for one section of our externship course. We're very explicit that the purpose of that seminar is to develop professional identity formation. We were having a conversation in that class just last week about the students who are working in the DA's office and what it's like to have a client that is sort of amorphous and not an individual client. And one of the students said, you know, it reminds me of that problem we read in the first year course where we had an overzealous prosecutor, and he kind of identified with the victim as if the victim were his client and interfered with his ability to act with fidelity to the law. And I thought, oh, this is great. You know, he was just feeding back all of these things. So we certainly have stumbled along the way, and we're going to continue to improve it. But I am proud of this, and I think that we are making a difference in our students' lives in what we are doing there.